If you're starting university this fall, you're probably somewhere in between being super excited and being kind of scared, realizing that you're going to have to move away from home, meet new people, make new friends, somehow figure out university level work, and manage your entire life on your own. So that was me a year ago, except that I moved all the way from Texas to Oxford, 5,000 miles, to start my first year at Oxford. In my first year, I went from not knowing anyone to having a really solid group of friends. I learned how the whole UK education system works. I passed my prelims with honors, and now I am excited to go back, and I'll be vice captain of rowing, so I started a completely new sport. So here are some things that I learned in the process. Number one, you are never going to feel completely prepared. Everyone is coming into this, they don't know what it's like. Even if you've watched every video and read everything you possibly can, you do not know what it's like until you are there. So don't worry too much about what you're going to have to bring, what everything's going to be like, what studying's going to be like, planning your routines, because you will figure out all once you're there and you're able to adapt to the situation itself. You don't need to know which library you're going to, you don't need to plan out all the friends, you don't have to join all of the group chats that there are, because you will figure out all once you're there. And like anything that you really do beforehand, it can be somewhat helpful, but it's not going to make a big difference. Number two, learn your surroundings before life gets too busy. One thing I would definitely recommend doing is getting your lay of the land, understanding where things are, because it will save you so much time in the long run if you have a rough idea of where the things are. And if you've done like an orientation tour, this might even happen in your first week. But if it doesn't, before it gets really busy, try to walk around, figure out where your grocery store is, where a few libraries are, work on your route to your classes if you know where those are. And if you have a bike, figure out how the biking works, because I ended up getting a bike later in the year, but like there are certain bike lanes and certain paths that the bikes have to take, so try to figure all of that out at the beginning before you get really busy during term. Number three, Freshers Week is not a deadline for you finding your friend group. At my Freshers Week, we mostly stuck around our staircase group because that's how our like dorms were broken down. So there was maybe like a dozen to 20 people in that group. And while I am really good friends with some of those people still, some of them, I don't talk to as much. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but just because, we've grown and we've gone into different friend groups. So the people you're hanging out with that week may or might not be the people that you will start hanging out with more often afterwards. Once you'll get into the swing of things, you'll realize that maybe those people, don't have a lot of the same interests as you. Maybe you don't do the same activities, and you'll meet people when you're actually doing things. Like once you start a sport, you'll meet people through your sport. Once you start your course, you'll meet people through that. And so you don't have to worry so much about going to all the socials and events and making friends the very first week of school. During your first week, yes, please try to go to a ton of things, get yourself out there, but also don't worry too much about missing a few events. There were some times when there was going to be like late night events that were aligned in our like first week schedule that, was for everyone who was at my college, telling us where we should be, what social thing, what club we should go to. And as someone who doesn't drink and I don't really party, I was like, oh, I don't really want to go to these. And even though there were replacements that were like non-alcoholic replacements, I didn't really go to those either, because I realized that I was going to be so tired and I wouldn't have time for the morning activities if I stayed up all night going to the later like night events. And honestly, I don't think it like really hurt me whatsoever. Like I still met people, I still got friends, I still had a good time, but I didn't have to go and drain myself, because also you will get sick. Everyone being there the first week of school, everyone gets sick. I was sick every other week my first term at Oxford because I just wasn't used to like, I guess, any of like the British viruses or colds that were there, and so I was sick every other week. So your sleep is very important, because if you don't have that, your immune system will be weakened. So yes, go to lots of things and try lots of new things. I ended up rowing, that was a new thing that I tried, but you don't have to go to absolutely everything, because you're just going to overwhelm yourself and probably it'll do more harm than good. It's better to be busy than to regret not doing anything. So I would much rather you join a ton of things and then realize that, oh shoot, I can't do all of this, than you sitting in your room just scrolling or relaxing. Because while it's important, like I said, you do want to get your sleep, you do want to get some relaxing time in. If you're just constantly like going library, food, bed, repeat, you're probably not going to have a great time at school. So it's important to have a lot of different things that you're signing up for. Like I went to some yoga classes, I would go on walks. I would try to do things, even though they're like relaxing, like going on a sunset walk. It's not gonna like drain me or take a lot of my energy, and I could do that alone. I didn't have to go with people, I didn't have to socialize, but it still makes you feel more refreshed than just sitting in your room. And you don't want to look back on your time at school that's so limited and be like, oh, I was just in my room, I was just in my bed, I didn't really do anything. Of course, we have to talk about it because academics is probably the whole reason that you're going to university in the first place. It is okay to not understand everything that you're learning and not be caught up with the whole education system. Like for me, I switched from the US, where it's much more like you get grades all the time, you have lots of little assignments, to Oxford, where everything is based around one exam at the end of the year, which I was kind of used to with AP style. But even like I got into my tutorials and they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to work on your essay writing and how you do it, because they just have different expectations. They have different things that they like. In the States, my essays were very good, I would get top of the class marks, but then in the UK it's like, okay, no, we actually want this. Like in high school they were like, oh, don't use first person, but in university they want you to use first person if you're the one making the argument and you're the one having the original thought. So it's okay to have that adjustment period, and even if you're getting marks that are a little bit lower than you would have expected at your previous school, just take that time to adjust, try to get as much feedback as you can, and realize that you can still, work towards it. It doesn't mean that you're not as good as everyone else or that you won't ever understand it. You can totally work from it and build up, and you'll learn how to study as well. At Oxford, I am mostly asynchronously learning. I have my tutorials and I have my lectures, but most of the time I am just reading, writing essays on my own, and I developed a really routine way of doing it where I would try to get as much reading done, and I would kind of have my structure build out while I was doing the reading, and then I would have my go-to essay structure so that I could just write it really without too much brain power. And you will figure that out as you go through the process. You don't need to worry about having the knowledge all beforehand. On the same topic, you need to know when to stop working, because there are some people who would literally be in the library from 8:30 a.m. all the way until midnight or later, because you kind of always have more that you could learn. For my essays, I could always go and do more supplementary reading and more supplementary reading, and it can always get better because it's an essay. It's not like once you finish the math question, you got it and that's it. There are some degrees that are like that, but I don't think not all of them. So definitely you need to know when to put the work away and take a pause and go do something else, because if you're just constantly in the library, you're going to burn out. So it's good to have an amount of time that you have allocated, because also your work will expand to the amount of time you give it. So if you tell yourself, oh yeah, I'm going to be in the library until 1 a.m., then your work will probably take that long. But on the other side, you should schedule time to be in the library. Just don't make it all the way until the depths of the night. As far as finances go, figure out what you think is worth spending money on. If you enjoy going into the dining hall and eating the food there, even though it's more expensive than if you just had something in your room because you like the social aspect, or if you like going out and getting drinks every night, if you care about, updating your closet for every new formal, just figure out what you actually want to spend money on so that you don't overspend or kind of regret things that you spent money on. Most experiences at school, I feel like you don't really need to spend money on, because there's so many things to do that you don't have to pay for. But if you do enjoy, paying to go to a concert or an event, a ball, some balls are really worth it, some aren't in my opinion. I went to the biology ball, I got a half price ticket, I don't even know that it was worth that. But I went to a boat party in London and that was more expensive, but I really enjoyed it, and it was a really unique opportunity that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So definitely think about your different things that you want to spend money on and what actually matters to you, and don't feel pressured by other people and what they're doing. You don't have to have everything figured out. You will figure out as you go. Make sure to enjoy your time and take advantage of all the different opportunities that the school presents you with. There are so many different things that you'll never get to do other than when you are at university. So don't waste that time, but also don't feel pressure to be doing 1,000 things at once, because you really still want to enjoy it, but also getting the most out of it. So I hope you have a great time and good luck at your first year.